What if the price of a wish was everyone you love? Today, we open the box that turned survival into a curse and unleashed a darkness that won't stop until it takes everything. Welcome to Verified Nightmare, where true horror never leaves you. If you love stories that chill your bones and keep you guessing, smash that like button and subscribe now, so you never miss the next nightmare. Childhood shadows. Ryan Bennett's earliest memories unraveled in sunlight, a boy cradled by ordinary joys, far removed from darkness. He lived in a quiet Washington suburb, a neighborhood stitched together with straight drives and tidy lawns. His parents, Mark and Linda Bennett, were gentle in their parenting, steadfast in their love, and careful to keep their son shielded from the bruises of the outside world. If there was a crack in Ryan's childhood, it never showed. He was neither popular nor an outcast, drifting in the temperate middle. His best friends, Sarah Goodwin and Mike Sanders, came into his life accidentally, first through a sandbox scuffle, then with laughter years later in middle school. Ryan's world was animated by their teasing voices and the growing sense of mutual loyalty, the kind unobtrusive but unbreakable. Anna Harper joined their circle in high school, her presence quiet but luminous, the group's center of gravity when tempers flared or moods dulled. Ryan's home was a sanctuary against the clamoring uncertainties of adolescence. The Bennetts took pride in their simple traditions: Friday night pizza, summer fishing trips, winter evenings near the fireplace. Mark was an electrician, quick with stories, slow to anger. Linda worked at the local library, her voice a gentle current even when correcting Ryan's mistakes. Ryan learned about patience and forgiveness under their roof. There was trust in their household, a faith in ordinary days. School life was a measured rhythm. Ryan was a middling student, better in art than mathematics, but his charm lay in authenticity. Teachers noticed him for his respectful candor. Classmates welcomed him for his dry wit. His circle expanded marginally, never enough to make him the center of attention, always enough to keep loneliness at bay. As the seasons pivoted towards Ryan's 18th birthday, anticipation built for a milestone neither he nor his friends could ignore. Sarah suggested a trip for the group, a single wild adventure before they scattered for college. Mike, ever the enthusiast, found stories online about a haunted house, isolated on the outskirts of a forgotten rural highway. Anna, half joking, half concerned, warned against chasing shadows. In the end, the promise of freedom of a last childish rebellion proved irresistible. That summer, Ryan noticed subtle changes. Nights grew heavier. His dreams, occasionally peppered with anxiety, were haunted by fleeting images he didn't understand. Yet reality pressed forward, unrelenting and bright. Every moment with his friends' chain restaurants, hiking trails, overnight gaming marathons felt like a promise. Nothing sinister could emerge when surrounded by laughter. His parents were uneasy about the trip, their warnings soft but lingering. "Don't let them drag you into anything reckless," Linda urged, her eyes searching Ryan's for invisible dread. Mark handed him a battered flashlight, just in case stories are true. He winked, masking parental fear with casual humor. Ryan grinned, stuffing the flashlight in his backpack, blind to the peculiar current settling over their lives. On the eve of departure, the group assembled in Mike's sedan, bags and nerves barely contained. Sarah wore a charm necklace for luck, and I carried a camera to document the misadventure. Ryan sat in the back seat, window rolled partly down, inhaling the dusk air tinged with grass and distant rain. The engine sputtered to life, and the world shifted as headlights cut into the approaching night. Suburban order swept away by the law of the unknown. As highways blurred into winding forest roads, conversation buzzed around urban legends, forbidden rooms, and the greedy spirits rumored to haunt fallen mansions. They mocked the notion of fate, traded dares about who would last the longest inside the haunted house. Ryan felt a chill under his skin, part jubilation, part caution, but kept his doubts silent. That's what courage looked like among friends. Mike parked outside the decrepit house, its silhouette hunched beneath ancient trees. The air was heavy with possibility, dusk now yielding fully to darkness. The friends hesitated, hearts pounding in synchrony, before stepping into the overgrown yard. A padlocked iron gate fell open with surprising ease. Inside, time bent. Shadows seemed to thicken along the hallways, swallowing their choking bravado. Sarah took the lead. Flashlight beam darting over peeling wallpaper and shattered picture frames. Anna's camera flashed, momentarily painting the night in sterile brightness. Mike ran ahead, his laughter echoing in the dust-laden air, daring the others to follow. Brian lingered in the entrance, studying every detail: the sagging staircase, the gaping doorway, the dust drifting through lamplight. His pulse kept a ragged rhythm, a silent warning as he pressed deeper into the haunted heart of the house. He found himself drawn towards a forgotten wing, footsteps muffled on a rotting carpet. There, in a cracked alcove beneath a window, lay the object that would change everything. An antique, ornate box named Umbramine's Shadow in Latin, its surface marked with symbols Ryan didn't recognize, its presence oddly magnetic. He knelt, breath faltering, and reached for it, aware only of a vague sensation that the world had paused for this one moment. When his fingers closed over the box, cold energy surged through his veins, a fleeting, electric chill, as if the shadows themselves had noticed him. Ryan blinked, heart thudding, and the room brightened abruptly, returning him to the sounds of his friends somewhere nearby. He tucked the box into his jacket, dismissing an involuntary shudder. The group reunited moments later, swapping stories, jostling away the unease. Outside, the night felt changed. As they piled into the car for the drive home, Ryan noticed a peculiar weight pressing on him, a presence both dull and expectant. He said nothing, not wanting to disrupt the fragile spell of their friendship. As the engine roared to life and the countryside sped past, Ryan's world was about to change forever. He simply couldn't see how. The trip that changed everything. Mike's sedan sped away from the haunted house, headlights sweeping across lonely hills as Ryan's friends sang along to the radio, eager to shake away nerves. Sarah shared jokes to keep the mood bright, while Anna took blurry snapshots to memorialize their brush with the supernatural. Ryan stayed silent, the ornate box heavy in his lap, items of that night weaving together in his mind like pieces of a puzzle he wasn't ready to solve. Through winding country roads, laughter bounced between car windows. Mike, always chasing thrills, pressed the gas pedal and took sharp turns that sent Anna squealing and Sarah clutching her seat. "Chill out, Mike," Anna shouted, half playful, half concerned. Mike only flashed a reckless grin in the rearview mirror. "If ghosts are real, let's see if they want a ride." A sudden flash of headlights from an oncoming car made Sarah tense up, and Ryan's chest tightened with an unfamiliar dread and icy, prophetic fear that outpaced common sense. He stared at the box in his lap, feeling its cold presence burrow deeper into his consciousness. Images began to flood his thoughts, unbidden and vivid, twisting metal, shattered glass, lifeless faces. His imagination spun grim scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. A violent swerve, a collision so fierce that laughter fell silent forever. Friends reduced to statistics, a tragedy in tomorrow's news cycle. Ryan gripped the box, willing the fear to dissipate, but the more he tried, the sharper the visions became. The car jolted over a pothole, steering dangerously close to the edge of the winding road. "Enough," Sarah yelled, grabbing Mike's shoulder. Finally, Mike eased off, letting the tension fade. "All good, princess. Just keeping things interesting," he said. But a heavy silence crept in. Relief flooded the vehicle as they neared the familiar lights of their town. Ryan was the first dropped off. He stepped onto his driveway, inhaling the crisp night air, but a sense of dislocation lingered. He watched the car pull away, The reflection of his friend's face is framed in the window, unaware of how close they'd come to disaster. He clutched the antique box, every shadow in his yard seeming to lean inward. Linda greeted him at the door, unaware of the invisible guest Ryan carried within. The sedan rounded the corner, vanishing into the dark. Under the hum of streetlights, Ryan's mind replayed the nervous laughter, Anna's camera flash, the jostle of Mike's wild driving. He lingered at the window, his imagination pinging with half-formed dread scenes of headlights bursting from a blind turn, Mike's knuckles white on the wheel, shrieks and the screech of tires as danger nearly licked their heels. He didn't know that, just a mile beyond, fate was drawing its line. As his friend sped deeper into the night, the road's gentle curves became traps. Out of the shadows, a truck emerged without warning, its headlights turning the world blinding white inside the sedan. In those final, wrenching seconds, Mike's bravado evaporated, replaced by pure animal terror as he slammed the brakes. The car fishtailed, and a scream tore through the air. Sarah reached out in reflex, and her shout cut short as metal struck metal. Windows exploded, airbags burst, the sound of the world splintered into cave steel folding, glass streaming, every heartbeat an eternity of fear. In the fullness of night, sirens followed. Anna's camera lay twisted beside her. Sarah's last words vanished with the uproar. Her hand still gripped the edge of her seat, knuckles pale in the gloom. Mike, slumped over the wheel, was locked in a silence deeper than any prank or dare. When the ambulance lights painted the blacktop red and blue, they only found aftermath, the echo of laughter now replaced by the hush of grief, headlights flickering in the wet. Inside, the house was quiet, the only noise a distant TV buzz and the muffled thump of Marcus' tools in the garage. Ryan moved through the rooms, haunted by visions of twisted metal and distant screams. He tried to sleep, but the box on his nightstand glimmered faintly, casting tiny shadows across the ceiling. The next morning, Ryan's phone erupted with frantic calls. Anna's mother, Sarah's sister, then a police officer, a sequence of voices trying to soften an impossible truth. There had been an accident late last night. No survivors in Mike's sedan. Shock collapsed over Ryan, guilt igniting like wildfire. He barely remembered speaking, barely registered the hands on his shoulders or the cold coffee pressed into his hands. The funeral was a blur. Flowers, closed caskets, communities grieving together. Friends and neighbors clung to Ryan, grateful he hadn't been in the car, whispering prayers for the lucky survivor. Linda and Mark stayed close, wounded by their own relief. Ryan drifted through days, watching his life become a monument to absence. He buried the box in his closet and avoided the haunted house in his dreams. Sarah's absence stuck sharpest, and a smile haunted him every morning. Yet, pain faded into weeks, then months. College letters arrived. Ryan packed his bags, chasing a future he wasn't sure belonged to him. The box remained, unforgotten. Its lid never opened. He noticed the faint shadow trailing him as he boarded the train for Springfield University, a presence darker and more patient than any living grief. The spirit's bargain. Springfield University opened its arms to Ryan Bennett, with a whirlwind of nervous expectation and ambition, a landscape of red brick buildings and ancient oaks, humming with the energy of beginnings. Ryan arrived carrying 2 suitcases, a blank notebook, and the lingering pain of loss pressing against his chest. He moved like someone trying not to be noticed, but fate would not let him fade into the background. His dorm room was alive with clutter and possibility. Posters of forgotten bands hung from the walls, and the air buzzed with the eager noise of students testing stolen freedom for the first time. Ryan's roommate, Alex Murphy, was a ball of kinetic enthusiasm. Blonde, broad-shouldered, and irrepressibly friendly, Alex made it his personal mission to coax Ryan to every event: the football games, awkward orientation mixers, late-night poker sessions. Even the resident advisor tried to crash. Ryan resisted at first, nursing the quiet ache of friends he'd never see again. But Alex's charm was relentless, and gradually Ryan let himself laugh again. In lectures and study groups, Ryan gravitated toward Grace Turner, a biology major with sharp eyes and a patient way of listening. They bonded over coffee in the crowded campus CAF, sharing melancholy stories that ran just under the level of confessions. It was Grace's calm that first eased Ryan back into the world. She saw the shadow in his gaze, never pressed, but always made space for him at her table. There were others, of course. Tyler Reed, competitive and charismatic, saw Ryan's quiet confidence as a challenge. He made a habit of taking the opposing side during discussions, turning every class into a subtle debate. For some, Tyler was the golden boy, confident and quick-witted, spearheading politics club meetings and running for student senate sophomore year. For Ryan, Tyler was a test, a constant low simmer of rivalry that pushed him to sharpen his arguments and defend his opinions. Despite the old wounds, Ryan excelled. He found comfort in the structure of his classes, the routines of research, and the company of new friends who knew nothing of the haunted house or shattered glass. His professors praised his work ethic. Alex dragged him to campus events until Ryan's quiet humor won more friends. Grace and Ryan grew ever closer, finding solace in late-night walks beneath the cathedral towers. A tentative hope took root. Yet, somewhere behind his closet door, the antique box rested undisturbed. Its surface had grown a coat of dust, but its presence remained unmistakable, like a subtle shift in temperature, a weight in the room that never truly left. The darkness did not reappear all at once. The first tragedy came quietly, announcing itself in subtle tremors before disaster struck. After Tyler staged an especially public takedown of Ryan's presentation, casting doubt on Ryan's sources in front of the class, his voice sharp and mocking, the air between them seemed to crackle with something worse than rivalry. Days later, as campus quieted for midnight, Tyler was found sprawled on the cold tile of his dormitory hallway, a tangled heap of limbs and shadow. A faint checkerboard of blue light flickered above his body, the last evidence of whatever late-night arguments or private demons had passed. Paramedics arrived to the sound of shouts and gathering feet, their radios spitting static as they worked furiously over Tyler's unmoving form. When he was finally rushed through the emergency room doors, Tyler's lips were an unhealthy blue and his pulse a stuttering whisper. Medical professionals were baffled. Scans revealed no cause. Test after test produced no answer. The seizure had come like a thief, stealing away a piece of him and leaving confusion in its place. Tyler's recovery was slow, hospital lighting bleaching his skin, tubes and machines making him look both years older and strangely unreachable. His old energy, his campus swagger, the certainty in his voice all seemed muted, as if the world had pulled a curtain over the peak of his brightness. Whispers circled in the dorm. Overwork, a freak accident, stress, drugs, or simply a cruel twist of fate. None felt right to Ryan. He felt only confusion and a trace of guilt he could not explain, the sense that a shadow had passed through and chosen Tyler. Not long after, the sense of ominous chance returned with new malice. Professor Carmichael, recently incensed over Ryan's late submitted paper, had delivered his penalty, her words crisp and public, eroding what was left of his confidence. Days later, campus rumors spread that she'd missed a step in the echoing stairwell of the science building, tumbling down with a sound witnesses described as wet branches breaking. The walls echoed with her cry, books and papers skittering around her as she landed at the bottom, her leg twisted unnaturally. Bones splintered beneath skin. Doctors would later call it a freakish break, not the sort caused by a simple misstep, but something that seemed almost calculated. Students joked about the Bennett curse, trading snickers and nervous glances in the dorms, but the words told Ryan every time he heard them, each syllable tinged with suspicion that tragedy was following him with patient, predatory steps. It didn't stop there. The shadows seemed to ripple outward, touching anyone who crossed Ryan with the faintest edge of malice or envy. Emily Sanders, a classmate infamous for her sharp tongue, had spread a particularly cruel rumor about Ryan, and Grace, her laughter echoing in the halls, turning glances cold and isolating Ryan in the lunchroom. For days, tension simmered beneath every encounter. Emily made a game of undermining Grace's kindness with subtle barbs, gathering a following around her sly whispers. The reckoning came without warning. During a sweltering afternoon cheerleading practice, Emily executed a complicated stunt, a leap she'd performed often, to applause. But in a heartbeat, her luck failed. Her sneaker caught on the slick gym floor, momentum twisting her body midair. She landed with a sickening crack, the echo of bones striking hardwood ringing through the gym. The shriek that followed stunned her teammates into near silence. Paramedics found her clutching her arm, face white with shock, mangled wrist already beginning to swell and bruise. The news swept through the school with an almost gleeful, superstitious hush. Rumor and pain fused in a single, unexplainable accident. Shortly after, the cafeteria erupted in chaos one busy morning. The workers hustled between trays and cash registers, steam rising amid clatter and chaos. Earlier that week, an older woman on staff had chuckled cruelly at Ryan's nerves when he dropped his tray, her words sharp, her laughter tinged with the meanness of routine humiliation. That day, in the rush of breakfast, she reached for the heavy coffee urn. Her foot slipped on a patch of spilled milk, sending the scalding liquid splashing across her arms and chest. She screamed, the burns immediate and vicious, her cries drawing shocked stares and frantic calls for help. Ryan watched, stricken from his seat, as sterile gloves and gauze replaced ridicule in the lunchroom. With each grim incident, Ryan felt the air grow heavier, the world itself bending around the box now hidden in his closet. Accidents multiplied, each more personal than the last, each following the invisible echo of resentment or humiliation that seemed to radiate from him, and leaving Ryan more terrified that he was the cause. Ryan never said anything out loud, and neither did Grace or Alex, but the students who wronged or humiliated him seemed to be caught in a web of bad luck. Ryan refused to believe in omens. He blamed coincidence and statistics and the random chaos of campus life. Still, every time anxiety or anger tightened his chest, and each time he imagined some disaster befalling his rivals, the world seemed intent on making his darkest thoughts real. One chilly October night, Grace confronted him as they walked across the quad, leaves crumbling beneath their shoes. "People are talking," she said softly, "about what happens to anyone who crosses you." Ryan looked down, hands stuffed in his pockets, unwilling to meet her gaze. "You're not cursed, Ryan. Everyone has shadows. Don't let them define you." Her words were kind, but fear lingered in her voice. This was no ordinary run of bad luck. Back at the dorm, Alex tried to dispel any notion of supernatural involvement. He was loud and irreverent. "If there are evil spirits on campus, they're probably just upset about midterms," but even he began to tread more carefully. The incidents escalated one evening after Ryan quarreled with a fellow student, Marcus Dean, who accused him of cheating. The next morning, Marcus, the same boy who had mocked Ryan as stumbling the week before, took the main staircase at his usual careless pace. Without warning, his foot shot forward as if kicked from beneath him. Though the steps were bone dry, Marcus tumbled forward, his head striking a lower step with a hard crack that drew startled gasps. Teachers rushed over and found him dazed and bleeding, a shallow cut on his scalp and his eyes unfocused from the blow. There were no slick spots, no tricks, just an inexplicable, sudden fall. As paramedics carried Marcus away for a concussion, uneasy whispers followed, and Ryan felt the chill of the box's shadow tightening around him once again. By now, Ryan stopped believing in coincidences, but what was he supposed to do? Stop feeling things? Avoid everyone. He doubled down on positive thinking, pouring himself into volunteering, studying, and kindness, and almost miraculously, the accident ceased. Spring semester passed sunny and tranquil. The shadow seemed to recede. As graduation approached, Ryan was lauded by classmates and professors. He received accolades, scholarships, and a prestigious job offer from tech startup Atlas Innovations. When Grace accepted a position at a hospital nearby, and Alex landed a job in New York, it felt like fate was giving them all a second chance. Yet on the night before he packed for the next part of his journey, Ryan found himself alone at last, facing the back of his closet. He lifted the antique box. Its carved patterns glimmered faintly in the lamplight. For a moment, just a moment, Ryan thought he saw his own fear swirl in its reflection, and the room chilled as if someone had opened a window to an endless void. Left behind the day Ryan Bennett left Springfield University, clouds had thickened over the old campus, casting the brick buildings in somber relief. If there was joy in his departure, it was hidden behind the tight smiles of friends and the half-hearted festivities thrown in his honor. Ryan had spent years building a new identity, yet every milestone now felt heavy, tethered to a growing awareness that nothing in his life was truly separate from the shadow that first touched him that night at the haunted house. His parents, Mark and Linda Bennett, arrived hours before his graduation to help him pack for the move to the city. Mark, stoic as ever, tried to mask his pride with quiet jokes, his graying hair damp with the morning drizzle. Linda moved quietly through the dorm, folding Ryan's clothes into boxes and humming the lullabies she used to sing when he was a boy. Occasionally, she glanced at Ryan with worry shadowing her features, as though expecting some spectre from the past to reach out and reclaim him. Alex Murphy and Grace Turner had already started their goodbyes. Alex had landed a new job in New York and was determined to make a big exit, hosting one last party in their cramped apartment for a handful of college friends and neighbors. Grace stopped by early in the afternoon, her white coat still on from the hospital shift she'd just finished. "You'll visit, right?" she said, searching his eyes for any hesitation. Ryan managed a smile. "You bet. Promise me you'll stay out of trouble at the party was a bittersweet affair." Laughter mixed with nostalgia and the ache of endings. Ryan found himself slipping away from the clamor more than once, stepping onto the rain-slicked balcony to watch the shadows crawl over the city. When he looked back inside, Alex was in the midst of an animated story, hands flying. Grace was catching Marcus Dean up on her latest late-night shift. The world, for a moment, looked perfectly ordinary. After the party, Grace stayed to help Ryan finish packing. The conversation meandered from future hopes to their last shared exam, but inevitably, it circled back to old wounds. "Do you ever feel like you're just carrying something around with you?" Ryan asked, his voice barely audible beneath the hum of the city outside. "All the time," Grace replied. "But that's life, isn't it? We carry memories, the good and the terrible. It's how we move forward that matters." She smiled softly, but there was an understanding in her eyes she sensed more, always had, but honored the boundaries Ryan never dared to cross. In quieter moments, Ryan allowed himself to consider the uncanny pattern how every tragedy seemed to pivot on the axis of his deepest fears or frustrations. Whenever he lost control, reality bent and strange, often deadly, misfortune followed. He'd started to see himself as a kind of catalyst, a walking fulcrum for the balance of luck and doom. Graduation morning dawned with uncertain skies. Ryan dressed in his cap and gown alongside Alex, who made light of the solemn pomp with his signature irreverence. Downstairs, Mark offered Ryan his college ring, a family keepsake. "Wear it," he said, pressing the band into Ryan's palm. "It's seen its fair share of storms. Reminds you you're still grounded when the wind shakes things up." The ceremony blurred speeches, applause, the sweep of back rows down the aisle, Linda's tears shining in the crowd. Ryan accepted his diploma with a smile, but his gaze kept sweeping the audience, scanning for threats that didn't exist. He looked for Grace as students filed out. She pressed a small note into his hand. first and last cups of campus coffee on me." Don't lose touch. After lunch with his family subdued but warm, Ryan loaded the last of his belongings into the trunk of his father's sedan. He hesitated over the antique box, still buried in the corner of a suitcase. A cold unease settled in his gut, but he took it anyway. Leaving it behind felt dangerous in ways he couldn't quite articulate. The drive home was quiet, all of them lost in their own thoughts. Back at the house, Ryan returned to his childhood bedroom. It looked almost untouched. Sports trophies dusted and undisturbed, posters yellowed around the edges, the scent of old books and clean linen pervasive and comforting. Mark left him alone after dinner, and Linda hugged him extra tight before retreating into her nightly routine. Ryan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Memories stacked one atop the other: the haunted house, Anna's laughter, Mike's reckless smile, the funerals, the parade of accidents at college, and everywhere, the echo of the box's cold thrum. He wondered, not for the first time, what might have happened if he'd never touched the thing. If life could have gone on in its gentle, suburban way. Rain tapped at the window. From somewhere deep in the house, the sound of the television blurred into white noise. Ryan's mind drifted, caught between the comfort of home and an impending sense of doom. Dreams slid seamlessly from memory into nightmare. He stood once again in the haunted corridor, the carved box in his hands, its lid pulsing with light. He heard Anna scream, saw Mike's panicked face, felt the impact of metal, the sickening vertigo of loss. He tried to run, but every door led back to the same dim room. The box grew heavier with every step, until it was all he could carry. Ryan woke to dawn light cutting across the room, sweat-soaked and shivering. Downstairs, his parents moved through the kitchen, voices gentle, the house for a moment safe and solid. But the day's promise felt fragile. The ordinary rhythm easily shattered. As he prepared to leave for his new job and new city, Ryan packed the antique box careful, almost reverent. He knew now the shadow came with him, silent but ever present, waiting for the next moment of weakness. Grace's note slipped from the folds of his jacket as he closed his bag. "Stay grateful. Fear only leads you where you don't want to go." Chiek. Ryan read it twice, tucking it into his wallet alongside an old group photo, and wondered whether gratitude would be enough. As the Bennetts headed to the car, the house fell silent, the echo of forgotten dreams and hidden bargains hanging in the air. Fortune and misfortune. Ryan Bennett's arrival in Boston marked the dawn of another identity. The city's restless hum, a constant churn of haunts, footsteps, and ambition, welcomed him to his new home, a sunlit studio on the 4th floor of an aging brownstone. He wasn't running from his shadows. Rather, he was hoping the city's endless movement would drown them out. As he settled into the rhythms of his new job at Atlas Innovations, a buzzy tech startup with more ideas than office chairs, Ryan felt the promise of a clean slate fluttering in his chest. His colleagues quickly took notice of his quick analysis and collaborative energy. Grace Turner, ever the confidant, was a text thread away, providing encouragement during long, lonely nights. Alex Murphy video called from New York once a week, their friendship stretched thin but unbroken by distance. For the first time since the accident, the shadow of grief loosened its grip. There were moments, walking along the Charles River in the blue dusk or browsing music at the corner store, when Ryan could imagine he was simply lucky, a survivor, untouched by curses. Yet, beneath the ordinary, something stirred. The antique box, stowed in a desk drawer under files and forgotten receipts, rarely came to mind. When Ryan glimpsed it at dusk, there was only a shiver, a momentary awareness of something cold just out of sight. He convinced himself he had beaten superstition, even as campus rumors about the Bennett curse slipped away into myth. But Boston, for all its noise, was not immune to darkness. It began with a round of layoffs at Atlas. The manager, Mr. Harrington, who had berated Ryan publicly for a coding mistake, was unceremoniously fired within a week. Word spread of an ugly scandal, a last investment, a reputation soured overnight. Ryan felt an icy prickle not at Harrington's fate, but at the memory of his own frustrated, fearful thoughts that week, wishing the man's career would collapse under its own cruelty. A few weeks later, another oddity, a neighbor, Molly Carroll, who spread rumors about Ryan in the building, rammed her car into a street lamp during a heated argument with her boyfriend. She was unharmed, but the crash was so bizarre, so public, that it rattled even the jaded city folk. Ryan had seen her that morning, had caught the glare she gave him on his way out, had felt it twist in his gut a resentful wish that she'd simply vanish from his daily life. At work, Ryan's star rose as others faltered. His pitches landed, new projects materialized with his name on them. Handshakes came easily. People shuffled away those who doubted him. A quiet respect grew not outright popularity, but a wary admiration for his good fortune and unshakable drive. Still, the world provided warnings, as if testing him. One stormy Friday, he had an argument with the SEER worker, Victor Allen, over a stolen idea. Enraged and wounded, Ryan closed his eyes and pictured Victor losing his voice, unable to present at the critical Monday meeting. That Sunday, Victor landed in the ER with laryngitis, missing the meeting and the promotion he'd vied for. The pattern was unassailable. The timing, the targets, the uncanny precision of fate, they all pointed toward him. Anxiety threaded through his bravest days, laced each small victory with dread. Ryan tried to ignore it, just as he tried to ignore the box as a student. To quiet his growing fear, Ryan adopted rituals of positivity. He volunteered at shelters on weekends. He called his parents twice a week. When he caught Grace on the phone, their conversation stretched past midnight, full of the earnest optimism she used as a shield. He practiced gratitude, scribbled affirmations, listened to meditations before bed. For a while, it worked. The accidents eased, the office grew lighter, and the world seemed to conspire in his favor without exacting a cost. He even began dating a colleague, Ashley Lynn, whose calm was a balm to his nerves. Together, they explored bookstores and late-night diners, sharing dreams of escape to quieter places. But the peace was fragile. The nightmares returned, each sharper and more vivid than the last. Again, Ryan was back in the haunted corridor, the box in his hands, room spinning into infinity with no doors, only mirrors reflecting his own terrified face. He ran endlessly, his fear feeding some unseen presence, its voice now familiar Umbra, an oily whisper in the darkness. Umbra waited for emotion, for a spike of fear or a flash of bitterness. Whenever Ryan felt threatened, whenever he mentally wished ill on someone, disaster crept in. A maintenance worker who insulted him at the gym was injured by falling weights. A taxi driver who shortchanged him crashed days later. Realizing how each slip in his demeanor worsened things, Ryan grew vigilant, terrified of his own thoughts. Ashley sensed the unease but mistook it for common city stress. She tried to ground him with gentle reminders, their laughter turning melancholy as she urged him to let go of the little stuff. Ryan, desperate to keep her safe, distanced himself emotionally, choosing self-loathing over proximity. He grew obsessed with controlling his emotions, never wishing harm, never speaking his fears, never letting anxiety bloom. But in silence, the darkness thickened. Umbra, patient and unrelenting, brooded with every suppressed fear. Ryan sensed that his good fortune was not just luck but a bargain, one he had never intended to make, but whose price he was paying all the same. One night, pacing his apartment, he pressed his palm to the antique box. Its chill seeped up his arm, stronger than ever. Memories cascaded, Anna's laughter before the crash, Alex urging him into the world, Grace's gentle comfort, parents shielding him from pain. He saw, for the first time, the true toll his survival had exacted not just on enemies or rivals, but on those who hovered at the edges of his orbit, innocent or not. The realization nearly shattered him. Lonely and sleepless, Ryan watched from his window as the city pulsed below, each yellow-lit apartment a world of private joys and grievances. He wondered, as dawn colored the sky, how many other bargains had been made in darkness, how many shadows stalked the borders of luck and despair. He whispered an apology to the morning air and resolved to find answers, no matter where they led, even if it meant facing the spirit itself. Positivity shield. Brian Bennett's life became a pattern of intentional optimism after the realization of Umbra's lingering reach. His apartment, once cluttered with tech manuals, began to resemble the home of someone striving for inner peace. Sunlight spilled across houseplants, shelves lined with wellness books, handwritten cards from his parents and Grace Turner. Ryan embraced habits he once dismissed: gratitude journaling every morning, yoga stretches before work, nightly lists of things to look forward to. He was determined to guard his thoughts as fiercely as his privacy. For weeks, the city seemed charmed. Ryan noticed how stability settled into every pocket of his daily routine. The barista greeted him with a smile. His boss nodded approvingly at project updates. Even the cranky old dog downstairs let Ryan pet him without complaint. Ashley Lynn, steady and gentle, became a center of gravity. Their relationship grew in quiet, steady ways. She would drop by with homemade muffins, leave post-it notes on his fridge, "You've got this," and draw him out for strolls along Boston Common where they talked about childhood fears and silly dreams. Ryan confided more in Ashley than in anyone before. He told her bits about his survivor's guilt, the accident that changed his trajectory, the impossibility of ever feeling truly free. Ashley listened, folding her hand around his. "You don't have to carry every mistake forever," she said, and Ryan believed her in those moments, a shield against the lurking dread. At Atlas Innovations, Ryan's reputation soared. He managed projects smoothly, diffused team tensions, and took responsibility for mistakes that weren't his own. Colleagues saw him as a fixer, a person who made ordinary problems vanish with humility and tact. Mr. Harrington's replacement praised Ryan's empathy during crisis meetings. Even Victor Allen thanked him for support after recovering from his medical ordeal. Ryan's efforts extended into the city. On weekends, he and Ashley volunteered together at the local soup kitchen. There, amidst steaming bowls and faded linoleum, Ryan found comfort. The slow work of serving, sharing stories with clients who'd survived their own storms, the sound of laughter mingling with the clang of cutlery. He felt as though goodness might, for once, triumph over the shadow. Grace Turner's texts were another anchor. "Proud of you, Rye," she messaged after each volunteer shift. "Small kindnesses change worlds." Alex Murphy sent blurry selfies from New York. Beer in one hand, Rye grin glued across his face. Both friendships kept Ryan tethered, reminders of resilience and renewal. The change was dramatic. Terrible accidents that had shadowed Ryan's steps grew distant. Molly Carroll recovered, reconciled with her boyfriend, and even invited Ryan to her birthday dinner. Victor's voice returned, stronger than ever, and he landed a promotion at a competing company. Marcus Dean, once an adversary, greeted Ryan warmly on the street, sharing updates about his art show. It seemed as if, by focusing on positivity and forgiveness, Ryan had broken whatever dark chain bound his fortune to others' misfortune. But true safety proved elusive. The antique box remained, unopened in the drawer, its carved sides absorbing the afternoon sun with quiet malice. Ryan dreamed of it most nights, the intricate symbol shifting in the half-light, the feeling that something watched him still. Umbra's whisper crept into his dreams, not words, but a sensation like icy breath on the nape of his neck. Ryan developed new rituals to combat his fear. If dread crept in during a morning meeting, he would immediately recite a mental list, thankful for coffee, his team, Ashley's smile, If panic rose after a sharp exchange with a neighbor, Ryan closed his eyes and visualized forgiveness flowing out instead of resentment. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes he barely stilled the trembling in his hands. Ashley started to notice the subtle shifts in his behavior. One Friday evening, she asked, "Do you ever feel like happiness is borrowed?" Ryan hesitated, wanting to keep her safe from Umbra's influence, wishing he could confide the full, supernatural truth. Instead, he smiled, saying, "Sometimes, so I try to give it back wherever I can." The city moved into spring, warmth blooming on every sidewalk. Ryan and Ashley spent Saturday mornings wandering through farmers' markets, sipping lemonade and making lists of places to visit when their schedules allowed. Their laughter was soft, unforced, and Ryan recorded fragments in his journal as proof that normal life was still possible. One day, after a particularly fulfilling shift at the soup kitchen, Ryan lingered outside with Ashley, watching the sun slip behind the skyline. He felt content, a rare, radiant peace. In that instant, he believed he might finally have outlasted the spirit's influence. If he held on to hope, if he surrounded himself with compassion, maybe Umbra would never haunt him again. Yet that night, he dreamed a different dream, a shadow standing at the foot of his bed, the antique box levitating in the air, symbols aglow. Umbra waited, patient and silent. Ryan reached for Ashley's hand in sleep, but only caught Em at his touch. By morning, the sense of dread had faded, replaced with the stubborn determination of the truly hopeful. Ryan wrote, "Today is a good day," and believed it with all his heart. Unbeknownst to him, Umbra watched and waited, hungry for the day when gratitude alone could not hold back the darkness. Dream life with a dark undercurrent. Brian Bennett's life seemed, from the outside, to be built on luck. Atlas innovations grew rapidly, and Ryan rode each new wave of success with humility. Promotions came sooner than expected, projects blossomed with his steady touch, and even setbacks transformed into triumphs. His apartment grew brighter, filled now with art. He and Ashley Lynn chose together modest landscapes, quirky sculptures picked up at gallery nights, memories amalgamated into the contours of daily life. They became each other's solace. Ashley's easy laughter and gentle wisdom balanced Ryan's introspective nature. Where he carried the weight of old tragedies, Ashley insisted on living in the present, untethered by regrets. She would read aloud from novels as Ryan cooked, their evenings full of warm brightness and small rituals wine. The slow shuffle of jazz records, stories about her childhood in Seattle and his in Washington. "This is good," Ashley would say, leaning into him after long days, and Ryan learned to agree, letting hope stretch into the center of his world. Ryan's parents, Mark and Linda Bennett, visited only on occasion now, proud of the man their son had become. Grace Turner kept it close, her medical career blossoming. Alex Murphy texted silly videos from New York, forever the guardian of Ryan's better side. Ryan kept their words folded into his mind, reminders that happiness was not just survivable, sometimes it was deserved. Months spun into years, each routine deepening the sense of safety. Sometimes he would wake before dawn, heart pounding with leftover fears, but Ashley's presence would bring him back, her soft breath on his shoulder, the dim glow of their reading lamp, the world arranged in cozy layers. Still, the antique box waited in its drawer. On rain-soaked mornings or breathless midnights, Ryan swore he heard its lid skitter against the wood, symbols flickering in the periphery of his vision. These sensations he dismissed a trick of anxiety, a tired mind inventing ghosts. At work, challenges continued. A new manager, Felix Orr, pushed Ryan through heated projects with impossible demands. Arguments crackled at meetings, emotions ran high. But Ryan, determined to keep Umbra at bay, responded with calm, refusing to allow fear or resentment to take root. No disasters followed. Felix landed a bigger role at the company, and for once, Ryan was relieved that fate did not intervene. He used his fortune to help others. Ryan and Ashley donated to charity, mentored interns, organized weekend workshops in the city library for teens interested in tech careers. Ryan even reached out to the friendliest of former adversaries, Victor Allen, extending olive branches and coffee invitations. Life acquired layers of gratitude, his journal thick with thankful entries. Ryan developed a reputation as not only brilliant, but also impossibly kind. Friends called him the anchor, the person you went to when life bent too far, when storms brewed. Sometimes they joked about his luck, but now it was less threat, more marvel, a gift tied to compassion and steadiness. But beneath the accumulating kindness, nightmares deepened. Ryan's sleep grew fitful. The box appeared nightly, opening to reveal swirling darkness, its symbols glowing with malevolent promise. In these dreams, he wandered infinite corridors, each filled with faces he knew: Ashley, Grace, Mark, Linda, even Alex, each touched by the shadow just out of sight. One night, a particularly harrowing dream took hold. Ashley dangled in a void, fingers scraping against disappearing doors. Ryan chased after her, but the corridor stretched farther, multiplying into impossible branches. Umbra whispered from nowhere and everywhere, "Everything you love can be taken away." Ryan woke, chest locked, Ashley still sleeping peacefully beside him. But the terror lingered long into the day. As the nightmares intensified, reality began to warp at the edges. Ryan sensed it first during a team dinner, when an old college friend, Marcus Dean, joined the festivities for the first time in years. Marcus's jabs were friendly, nostalgic, yet Ryan's nerves twisted as he remembered old quarrels about luck and curses. That night, Marcus's car was sideswiped by a reckless driver, a non-fatal crash, but close enough to chill Ryan's blood. Ryan took greater care in his thoughts. He experimented with meditation, met with therapists, and talked openly about his anxieties, though never about Umbra itself. Ashley became his confidant, but even she could not comprehend the supernatural dread anchoring every joy. Moments of unease blurred into days of vigilance. When Ryan felt danger, the prickly static before panic, he retreated from situations, sometimes leaving a room mid-conversation, sometimes skipping events entirely. Each time, disaster struck elsewhere: an intern hurt in a bike accident, a fire at a nearby apartment. Ryan began to fear himself again. His actions or avoidance seemed to redirect Umbra's hunger to others. Ashley, patient but worried, pressed him for honesty. "You withdraw when things get tough." Ryan managed only half-truths. He cited stress, the legacy of old losses, a habit of self-protection he struggled to break. He started seeking answers just as he had in college, late at night consuming books on psychology and urban legends, trawling for stories of luck and supernatural bargains. Sites about spirits and curses brought no real comfort. Most stories ended badly or simply ended, their protagonists swallowed by confusion. The world around him darkened as the seasons changed. Ryan watched as the days grew shorter, the city's energy shifting toward winter's edge. He attended fewer gatherings, spoke less at work, called his parents with increasing frequency. Each kindness felt both necessary and performative, the desperate actions of someone trying to hold together a fragile shield. One evening, after a particularly terrifying nightmare, Ryan stared at the box, hands trembling. He reached for Ashley, but she was away visiting family. Alone in the apartment, Ryan whispered into the dark, pleading for release. "Please, let this end. I'll do anything." Umbra's silence was complete. Ryan resolved to seek out those who might understand, not therapists or friends this time, but spiritual experts. He searched for fortune tellers with real reputations, pouring energy into uncovering whether anyone had faced a spirit like Umbra before. As he prepared for this new phase, Ryan realized his dream life was not a testament to survival, not purely the product of luck. It was the delicate result of endless vigilance, conscious hope, and the unrelenting shadow that lurked beneath the surface. Nightmares and negativity. Boston nights grew colder as Ryan Bennett slipped further into anxiety's grip, each dream tightening like a vice around his sense of reality. The city was both a comfort and a threat, a place of warm lights, bustling crowds, and endless potential, but now filled with echoes of disaster whispering just beneath the surface. He had once believed gratitude could shield him. Now, each day felt like a careful negotiation with the darkness. The antique box had become a fixture in his nightmares, its symbols pulsing with cruel intelligence. Ryan's terror grew more sophisticated. Vivid hallucinations, flashes of Ashley Lynn in jeopardy, his parents lost on storm-black highways, Grace Turner standing frail and silent in hospitals where time moved wrongly. Every morning, Ryan woke spent and shivering. Anxiety pulled under his skin. Sleep deprivation undermined his best efforts at work. He was less focused at home, more irritable, with Ashley noticing his withdrawn moods. "Maybe you just need a break," she suggested, her tone gentle but firm. "Let's go away for a weekend. Clear our minds." Ryan agreed, but was quietly terrified what new setting might mean for Umbra's reach. He worried every trip, every change in routine, was fuel for some new tragedy. The feeling of impending doom became a constant companion. Ryan found himself retreating from anything uncertain. If a meeting felt contentious, he'd excuse himself, citing headaches or calls from home. If a neighbor argued in the hallway, Ryan would flee before words became sharp. He avoided crowded public spaces, worried he'd unwittingly wish something terrible upon a stranger. The consequences sharpened with every escape. A week after dodging a chaotic subway ride, he read of a fatal accident on the same train. Leaving a bar early on Ashley's birthday, Ryan avoided a fight only to learn the bartender was hospitalized after a mysterious fire. Ryan's once positive rituals now felt like desperate attempts to contain something ancient and cruel. Ashley, sensing the growing tension, tried to intervene. "You're not cursed," she insisted late one evening as rain painted blurry streaks on the glass. "But you're letting fear control everything. That's no way to live." Ryan could only nod, unwilling to reveal the full extent of his nightmares. The conviction that his thoughts, his presence, warped reality for those around him. The city reflected his paranoia. News stories about improbable accidents, frightened conversations among colleagues, subtle alienation as neighbors exchanged uneasy looks. Ryan began to see patterns everywhere, not just in disasters, but in moments of luck that benefited him. Every award, every fortunate outcome, every positive swing in his career now felt tainted, a ticking countdown to disaster. Seeking respite, Ryan returned to meditation and therapy, reaching out to his old friend Grace. She invited him to visit after a particularly bad spell. In the softness of her apartment, Grace listened as Ryan stuttered around the edges of his supernatural fears. "There are things I can't control," he admitted, eyes cast low. "Things that seem to happen because of me." Grace was silent for a long while. "I don't believe you can cause these things," she said finally, "but I do believe that trauma follows people. Sometimes the world just bends. Maybe you need to face what you're afraid of instead of running." Is that possible? Ryan felt the enormity of that question, the impossibility of confronting a spirit he couldn't see or understand. Still, he promised he'd try. Over the following weeks, Ryan turned his energy towards seeking answers. He delved deep into Boston's occult subculture, visiting fortune tellers, psychics, and spiritualists. Some were obvious frauds, their parlors cluttered with manufactured relics and shiny crystal balls. Others struck Ryan as genuinely peculiar. He left each reading unsettled, sometimes haunted by cryptic warnings or uncomfortable sensations. A turning point came at Madame Zelda's storefront, a flamboyant woman in a turban with eerily pale eyes. She welcomed Ryan and Ashley, promising insight for just $50 and your birthday. Ryan's doubts dissolved as Zelda described the outline of his nightmare as the antique box, the sense of impending doom, the thread of luck and loss. "There's something ancient around you," she murmured, voice low. "But it's not just a curse. It's a transaction. You get fortune, but you lose someone every time." Ashley shivered, sensing the shift. Ryan pressed for details, but Zelda smiled and shook her head. "I won't risk it, but I know someone who can help. If you're brave enough to find Elijah Reed, you'll get your answer that night." Disaster struck Madame Zelda's place, a gas leak and a fire, her shop consumed by flame. No deaths, but Zelda vanished, leaving only rumors and scorched windows. Ryan felt the old horror coil tighter in his chest. Researching Elijah Reed led Ryan deep into Boston's shadowy backstreets. He visited bookstores and ancient libraries, learned folklore about shadow spirits, and pieced together tales of old bargains, money and safety granted, but at a secret price. Umbra was there, in every story, sometimes a demon, sometimes a lost ancestor, always feeding on the lives of others to grant fortune to the chosen. Ryan grew obsessed with the idea that his luck was predatory, a hidden engine powered by tragedy. He looked for evidence in his journals, traced connections between moments of anxiety and calamity. His world became a web of cause and effect, with himself as the unwilling spider. Ashley fought to save him from despair, organizing interventions of friends and family, encouraging him to travel, to engage with life outside the haunted rooms of his own mind. But Ryan remained haunted, wary of bringing harm to those he loved, unable to let go of the conviction that Umbra watched every move. One sleepless night, staring at the antique box's glowing symbols, Ryan made his decision. Plain survival was not enough. He would track down Elijah Reed. He would learn whether the curse could be broken and whether Umbra Air's shadow could be expelled before it consumed everyone left in his orbit. He wrote a long letter to Ashley and another to his parents, just in case. He laid out his plans at dawn, promising to be careful, to return with answers. But the city outside seemed to whisper that safety was an illusion, and that fate once tempted would never truly let him go. Seeking answers. It was the persistent edge of terror and love for Ashley Lynn and his family, Brace, and even Alex Murphy that spurred Ryan Bennett's journey deeper into Boston's psychic underworld. He could no longer bear the thought of Umbra's shadow trailing behind him, feeding on every spark of fear, every unkind thought, every desperate wish whispered into the dark. The evidence felt indisputable. People who hurt him, people he unconsciously wished harm upon, people linked to his own moments of dread, suffered often catastrophically. His research began with legends. In dusty libraries, Ryan found references to spirits going back centuries, Umbra or versions of it, appearing in old sermons, local ghost stories about cursed objects, mysterious disappearances, sudden reversals of fortune. He pieced together warnings written into colonial diaries. Beware bargains made in fear. They are paid in blood, in folklore archives. The shadow spirit was sometimes a shapeless evil, sometimes a trickster, sometimes a family curse stretching back generations. Ryan wondered what unknown ancestor had first made the fatal pact. Books led to people, and people led to places Ryan never thought he would have to enter. He visited psychic shops thick with incense, small apartments where clairvoyants charged too much to read runes, and cramped offices filled with spiritual consultants who made wild promises about severing ties with misfortune. Many were fakes. A few felt almost sincere, but none could offer hope beyond a candle, a prayer, or a token protection spell. Ryan bought tinctures, carried amulets, chanted phrases to no effect. Ryan kept these travels secret from Ashley, not wanting her to worry, but she noticed the change. His appetite shrank. His laughter grew nervous. He looked over his shoulder too often. "I want to help," she told him, her patience unwavering. "If you're buried in something, I want to know what it is." Ryan hesitated, torn between a desire for honesty and the fear that his confession would put Ashley in Umbra's crosshairs. When he finally shared a version of truth, admitting he believed that his luck was tied to other people as pain Ashley held him through his tears, promising, "We don't give up, Ryan. Not on love, not on hope. Let's fight this together." Together, they tried everything conventional: therapy, spiritual counseling, even hypnosis. During one session, guided by a quiet woman named Dr. Patel, Ryan described the box in nearly surgical detail. Dr. Patel suggested trauma could take odd forms, manifest in symbols and dreams, but ultimately she believed Ryan's guilt was only survivor's guilt manifesting as magical thinking. Ryan left more desperate. He revisited Madame Zelda's charred shop, discovering only ashes and rumors. She had fled town after her accident, refusing to speak to anyone from her former circle. Ryan posted on online forums, describing his experiences. Most replies were mocking, but a few stood out: warnings written in cryptic tones. A private message from a user called Elijah Boston. He followed the clues. Elijah Reed's reputation preceded him, a recluse who'd helped free people from rare curses, a psychic whose readings were rumored to leave even skeptics shaken. His address led to a row of brownstones near Jamaica Plain, a place far enough from the city's glamour that it felt removed from time. Ryan dressed plainly on the appointed day, bringing only the antique box and a page of dreams scrawled in his careful hand. Ashley insisted on walking with him, but waited outside, a gesture of faith in both Ryan and fate. The building was shadowy and still, its windows covered in thick curtains. Ryan knocked, his heart thundering, ready for answers. Elijah Reed was older than Ryan expected, a man in his late 70s, with sharp blue eyes and a voice that trembled between warmth and authority. He invited Ryan in, shutting the door with deliberate care. The apartment was lined with books, talismans, and the musty scent of time. Ryan described the box, the patterns of disaster, the thread of luck and tragedy sewn through his life. Elijah listened silently, nodding. When Ryan finished, Elijah asked him to place the box on the table. He studied it for a long time, tracing fingers over the ancient symbols. "This is old," he murmured, "older than this city. Spirits like Umbra don't just attach to objects. They attach to intention, to bargains made in fear, bargains made in anger, bargains made in desperation." He told Ryan a story. Decades ago, Elijah's own family had suffered under a similar curse. A different spirit, but with similar conditions: luck for one, suffering for many. The details mirrored Ryan's own ancestor, artifact, spreading accidents, agony masked as fortune. Elijah offered the truth Ryan feared most. "Breaking this spirit is possible," Elijah said, "but it will demand more than avoidance or positive thinking. You have to face the seed of the bargain. What moment bound you? What did you truly want when you touched this box? What did this spirit take, and what has it been feeding on since?" The answer struck Ryan. Fear, anger, anxiety, a wish for safety at whatever cost, a wish to survive, even if survival came at the expense of others. Elijah explained that to sever Umbra's hold, Ryan must consciously confront his greatest fear, choose understanding over flight, and accept the possibility of sacrificing everything: luck, love, even life for those he loved. "You may not escape alive," Elijah warned, "but you could stop Umbra from spreading. Or you may lose everything and Umbra will go on. It's not an easy choice." Ryan left Elijah's apartment overwhelmed, but with clarity that bordered on terror. Outside, Ashley hugged him close, searching his face for answers. He didn't have them yet, but he knew what the final confrontation would require: absolute courage, profound sacrifice, and willingness to let go of the good fortune that had always haunted him. On the walk home, the city's lights seemed dimmer, Ryan typed out his final plan in his phone, contacting his family, protecting his friends, facing Umbra head-on. He wrote goodbye notes, just in case. Ashley found him crying in the dark and held him until sunrise, promising she would not abandon him. Umbra pulsed beneath every moment of hope and despair. Ryan watched the day begin and felt both more alone and more supported than ever before. His entire life led to this reckoning, a confrontation with the fortune spirit, a choice between survival and the salvation of those who had become his world. Revelation and sacrifice. Brian Bennett's final week was spent in a state of shivering clarity, a countdown not just to the confrontation with Umbra, but to a reckoning with every choice that had shaped his haunted life. The box sat in his apartment, radiating cold that seeped into the walls. Ashley Lynn became his unwavering north. She watched him with the eyes of someone willing to stay even as storms gathered. His parents, Mark and Linda Bennett, phoned each day, sensing unease behind the tremor in Ryan's voice, asking him to come home for a weekend. Ryan promised he would, secretly uncertain whether he would ever see them again. He wrote letters to each of them: Ashley, Grace Turner, Alex Murphy. His family apologies for the pain he carried, promises that if anything happened they should remember he'd tried, finally, to face the monster at the heart of his fortunes. He left instructions with Ashley, who at last understood much of the truth, urging her to get far away on the day he planned to attempt the ritual. She resisted, pleading to stand with him, but Ryan would not risk her life. Ryan needed help. He called Elijah Reed. The psychic explained, in a trembling voice, what the ritual would demand: to face Umbra at the epicenter of the original bargain, where fear, grief, and yearning had first mingled with supernatural power. For Ryan, that place was the haunted house where he'd touched the box so many years ago. Elijah warned the cost could be everything. Not just luck and happiness, but all that he loved, a thorough shattering of the life that had been built by stealing fortune at the cost of others. Ashley insisted on driving him, her face steely with love and dread. The journey to the haunted house was silent but full, their hands held tight, music playing softly in the background, a ceremony of goodbyes disguised as routine. The house, overgrown and decaying, loomed in the evening dusk. Birds scattered from the broken roof, and the old gate swung open as though acknowledging their arrival. Once inside, Ryan felt every heartbeat echo in his throat. Ashley waited outside, eyes locked on the silhouette of the house, phone ready to call for help if anything went wrong. Ryan entered alone, the box clutched in his arms. The ruined rooms were familiar, the wallpaper still peeling, the sour smell of rot, the long corridor leading to the exact alcove where Umbra's bargain had begun. Ryan knelt, placing the box at the center of the floor. He shut his eyes. Elijah's words repeated through his mind. You must walk into the terror. Let go of your survival instinct. Let go of your wish for fortune. You must accept ruin, if that's what is required, to save those you love. The air thickened. The room cooled to Arctic depths. Shadow flickered across the walls as Umbra coalesced formless, a mass of ink swirling on the edge of perception. Ryan spoke aloud, voice trembling. I renounce the bargain. I refuse another moment of luck bought at their suffering. Take my fortune. Take my life. Leave everyone else. Tears ran hot down his face, pulse sparking in panic. He forced the words through sobs. I understand now what I did. I set you loose among my friends and family. I set you loose in this world. I will not run anymore. I will not make you feed on anyone else. For a moment, nothing happened. The room grew darker, then horribly bright. Ryan felt his soul ripped open, every memory of fear and triumph exposed. He saw Anna Harper, Mike Sanders, Sarah Goodwin. Their laughter, their deaths, the way the pattern of doom had followed into college, and city life had finally drawn Ashley, Mark, Linda, Grace, and Alex into its orbit. Umbra's voice was a cold rush. This ends only when all debt is paid. You cannot break the chain by words alone. You must offer what was taken the full measure of your luck, and your blood, and your name. Ryan gritted his teeth. Take it. It's all I have left. The box burst open. Light and shadow spiraled into Ryan. He felt fortune unravel, a lifetime of golden chances collapsing. The warmth of Ashley's love fading. The memory of his parents as stable protectors shifting to dust. The house buckled. Ryan's breath locked. In one furious instant, he knew every happiness he'd experienced, every close escape, had come at a cost hidden from him. The spirit fed on fear, but it claimed lives in its name. There was no escaping the original debt. Only payment could end the cycle. Outside, Ashley heard Ryan scream a sound so final it broke her heart. She rushed in, but found only the box, the swirling remnants of shadowful mist, and Ryan lying still in the ruined alcove, a look of profound peace and sorrow etched in his features. The days that followed were a parade of funerals. Mark and Linda Bennett drove to the city, but died in a car accident days after learning of Ryan's fate. Ashley, numbed by grief and bewilderment, felt worlds collapse inside her, as did Grace and Alex, each touched by the curse whose terms Ryan had finally faced. One by one, they left the city or withdrew. Lives changed forever. Umbra's payment was collected not just from Ryan, but from his most erect circle, as if the spirit required equal measure for every gift it had ever given. The world moved on, memories of the Bennett family fading into suburban legend. A cautionary tale about bargains made in desperation and the cost of luck too easily won. Years later, on a different coast, a child exploring a condemned house found an ornate box, covered in dust, but pulsing faintly in the twilight. The cycle began anew, Umbra's hunger undiminished, waiting for the next soul fraught with fear and dreaming of safety. If you enjoyed the video, kindly like and subscribe to our channel. The end.